Welcome back to the lecture series on Design Thinking. In the previous lecture, we talked about prototyping and ways of prototyping, how to create prototypes and how to test them. In this lecture, we still deal with the prototyping, testing of the prototyping and convergent phase of prototyping. So previously, we talked about the divergent phase of prototyping where we create so many prototypes of the best ideas that were generated at the end of ideation phase, and we have taken up the prototyping part. Again, it's a divergent phase, and then we'll converge again to find out the best idea through the prototyping and to the testing of the prototyping with the user groups. So in this lecture we talk about a little bit on convergent phase of prototyping, of testing, and then we'll move on to the evolve phase, the final stage. In the business terminology, there is a word called pitching. So we need to create a pitch. So creating a pitch is not a full-fledged idea, but a rough idea or a model that is to be presented to the user groups and if for a preliminary investigation and feedback. Once it is approved, then we'll go for further investigation, and a full-fledged model will be developed after once the pitch is approved. So in the testing phase, we'll create a pitch. So that's what the prototyping is all about, and we'll create a story about that pitch around that prototyping. And why we need to test is already we have discussed a certain part of that. Still continue that. We need to refine the prototypes. It helps us to refine the prototypes. So once we create a prototype, that's not the end. We may improve the functionalities of the prototypes while testing with the user groups. So we need to continuously upgrade our prototypes. There is a need for that. And regarding the functionalities in terms of ease of use and wow factor. Wow factor is very important, that the user should feel excited. So we should catch that excitement. That's very important. So for which prototype and which functionality the user is feeling the excitement, that is going to change the entire game. So that wow factor we need to catch up with respect to the prototypes that we built. And sometimes it paves way to the next level of iteration of the prototyping, and it increases the point of value. How much value that we're adding to the idea, it is attaching to the solution, is also important. So we should increase the point of value of that prototype or the idea, and check the unexpected insights. During this process of testing the prototype with the user groups, sometimes we may come up with unexpected turns, unexpected observations, because we may think certain issues are important while building the prototype, but once it is shown to the user groups, users may feel certain other aspect may be more creating interest. So we need to focus on that. Unexpected turns will be there. We need to be very attentive to catch with that unexpected turns. So all these kinds of procedures and all these kinds of important features are to be followed in case of testing. Testing the prototypes also involves efficiency. Why? Because simply showing the prototypes is not enough. What do we do? How do we test while showing the prototypes? It also matters. We need to show the prototypes to the user groups and let them compare the ideas. So if we show different prototypes for different ideas, we should carefully analyze how they are differentiating the ideas, the merits and demerits with respect to the prototypes that we are showing. And also we should create experiences. Sometimes a physical model rather than a physical model, the solution may be in the form of an experience. We should be able to create an experience and let the user go through that experience and observe how he is feeling. So that's also another type of prototyping. And while prototyping is being tested, we should give preference to silently observe the moods of the users. That's very critical. Why? Because the wow factor can be identified only through the emotions of the user groups. So instead of talking too much, we should focus more on identifying the user emotions and user feelings. We should try to understand how user is perceiving it, the idea to be successful or not successful, which idea is going to be successful, and which feature is going to be successful, like that. So we should more focus on the user's identification of the success and failure of the concept level or the idea level or the functionality level even. So, and we should be able to gauge whether we are able to reach the user or not through this process. That's very important. So, mere showing the prototype is not an issue, but we need to capture those feelings of the users. So, based on such kind of exercise, critically on each of the prototypes that we have developed, we should be able to create a notes of that, create a understanding of the user needs, and then finally we should arrive at one prototype and one refined prototype rather, and one idea to be taken forward. That is going to be our next success story of the idea. Communicating to others about our strength of our idea and the value of the idea and what work we have done so far and how this is going to be useful and how this is going to be a betterment of the existing situation for the user groups is the central theme that we need to focus on. Why? Because even though the idea is very good, if we are able to convince, if we are unable to convince the user groups, then it may not see the light. Why? Because we are unable to push it forward. So, storytelling is another very crucial step in the entire design thinking process. The success on the further betterment of the idea into taking to the real world depends on how effective your storytelling is. Once the user is convinced through your storytelling, then more chances are there for your idea to become successful. So in the design thinking process, storytelling is one of the crucial parts of taking the ideas to the users. So in this phase, we should concentrate on the storytelling part, and we should narrate a very wonderful story to woo the customers or to enthuse the user groups. That is very much crucial. While preparing for the storytelling, you should focus on the orientation and the goal of your story. What is that you are going to achieve at the end of the day or end of the story rather? So we should focus on that, because by taking this idea forward, either you want funding or support, or you want to recruit more number of people, or build a greater momentum for your project, or introducing idea to the partners. So different aspects may be there. So you should focus on the pinpointedly on what idea and in what direction you want to prepare the storytelling process. Once you understand your audience, then the way you build the story also changes. So first you need to understand your audience first. So consider your audience. Who are going to be your audience? Either your organizational leadership, or your target users, or other users beyond the target group. There may be another level of users, may not be the target group, but peripheral groups. They are also very important. And your colleagues may be there, and your extended team members may be there, whom you have taken support, and the additional members that you have co-opted. They also be there. And potential partners may be there to take the idea forward, and the general public may also be involved. So you should very carefully identify the people to whom you are going to present your story, and prepare your story accordingly, not what you want to tell. No, in what way you should present your idea so that the user groups feel your importance of the idea. So that is very crucial here. The preparation for storytelling should be in such a way that we should plan to win the hearts and minds of the audience. The success lies in that, and we should have a rehearsals several times so that the entire process should create a sense of win-win situation for both. We should build a logical story and it should address all the different types of audience that are there before us, and it should cater to the needs of all the audience. Not only that, it should have a logical construct. The narration should have a logical construct right from the beginning. How do you start with a problem, and how do you empathize? What are the various interviews that you have conducted? Where were the places that you have visited? The sets of people that you have contacted, and all these things through empathize phase. And then how do you converge to define a problem? And then next phase of ideation phase, how do you diverge through various ideas? And then again, how do you brainstorm them? What are the wow factors that you identified, important factors that you identified? And how do you converge to set of ideas to go with? And then how do you build the prototypes, various prototypes? And how do you test them, to test those prototypes? And again, how do you converge to a single prototype idea that is to be taken forward? And what is the future for this idea? How do you want to develop this idea into a reality? And what are the wow factors in that? Through this journey, what are the emotions that you have captured? What are the important emotions that you have captured from the users? What made you to think this way to get the solution? And in your opinion, or in the opinions of the users, what is going to be a successful outcome? All these things are to be brought into this story, and it should be a well knitted story, well thought out, well knitted, and well presented story it should be. So this is how we need to prepare for the storytelling process. And in future as well, how you are going to scale it up, what are the problems that are going to be faced in scaling it up, or for the implementation process, and what are the possible friction points, and how do you want to resolve them? So down the line, you should give a roadmap for the future. So right from the past, the starting point, to the ending point of ultimate implementation, you should take your audience along with you, and they should be able to ride along the emotions that you have faced. So ups and downs, whatever ups and downs you have faced emotionally, and implementation aspects, identification aspects, all these things, you should take them along with you, and they should also feel the ups and downs of your story. Then only your storytelling process is successful. While creating the stories and narrating the stories, we should take certain precautions. That the story should not be for the sake of story. It should be very natural, and it should be a very well-connected story. And the presentation should not be melodramatic and hyperactive. It should be neat, clean, and apt. All your emotions should be apt up to the situation. They should be. Sometimes our over enthusiasm to convince others may spoil the entire story. We have to take care of that. And we should not be too much dramatic. Our feelings should be honest, and our expression should be authentic, and we should have the confidence of the clarity of thought. Whatever thought process that goes into that, you should have a very clear picture of what has gone into the creation of the idea, and creation of the prototype, and identification of the problems. Every aspect should be very clear of that. And you should be practical. Your solution and your presentation should also be very practical, crisp, clear. And you will succeed if you gain clarity of thought. That's a basic thing for the storytelling. You should not get confused. You should not get elongated at some points and very brief at some locations. You should not let that. Due importance has to be given to each and every aspect, and time duration of spending time on each aspects, and the overall time duration is also very important. So we have to plan everything in advance, and then only the storytelling process will be a successful one. And finally, most important thing is the change management. Since you are going to provide a solution which is different from the existing practices, the process of taking the users from the existing thing to the proposed new idea of implementation or behavior or solution, whatever. So this change management is very, very crucial. either at an industry or at personal level or at the group level. The change management is the ultimate final step where everything depends on the way we plan. Why it is important? Because we need to identify the friction points. Usually human tendency is to stay with the existing one and they will resist the change. Unless you show the path of success or win-win situation, human tendency is to resist the change. So we should break that barrier of resisting the change, and this change management should be very effective. And for this, what we need to do is we need to visualize the change. We should be able to project how the future is going to be or how the solution is going to be after implementation. So that visualization is very important. And we should use reasoning for this. Why we need to change, how we need to change, what is the benefit of change. Everything has to be very well narrated. Story should be conveyed to the story through the process of storytelling. And how the stakeholders are getting empowered through this process is to be explained. That's also important. And we should plan quick wins, in the sense the ultimate goal, apart from the ultimate goal of success, at every smaller steps, wins should be planned. Unless we show them the small successes at each level, they will not appreciate the entire process. So we should plan the entire process in such a way that at each small level, success should be tasted by them. And ultimately, we should create short-term targets with less scope of failure. See, even if in the first step, even if there is a small failure, then the entire story is going to be corrupted. So we need to be very careful in that and create short-term targets with less scope for failures, and we should start small and scale fast. We should start very small with small things, and gradually we should move and scale up to the entire solution. That's how we need to plan. So this is how we need to achieve the change management process, and ultimately we should be able to succeed. So with this, we'll come to an end of the step-by-step process of design thinking, and I hope this gives you a complete comprehensive idea of what design thinking is all about. In the next lectures, we talk about some of the success stories of design thinking.